Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of Newsmax Prime. I'm J.D. Hayworth. Of prime interest tonight, terror averted as Paris police shoot and kill a man reportedly wielding a meat cleaver and wearing what has since been determined to be a fake suicide belt. An eyewitness described what she saw to the BBC earlier today.
I live across the road from the police station, and I looked out the window and I heard shouts coming from the police station. I saw two policemen shouting at a man who was advancing towards them quite fast. And when the man didn't stop, they started shooting, and then the man fell.
I'm pleased to be joined here at the anchor desk by Miranda Kahn, and in turn from Newsmax Washington, we are joined by Ambassador R. James Woolsey. Jim is the former director of Central Intelligence. Today he serves as chairman of the Leadership Council for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, as well as the chancellor at the Institute of World Politics. Ambassador, as always, we appreciate your time here on Newsmax Prime.
Great to be with you, JD.
And we begin with a troubling story out of Paris, a very curious situation there. I think a lot of people heard about this and they go, okay, one of two things are going on here. Either this guy had a death wish, or perhaps he was carrying out a dry run for another attack. In your mind, which is the more likely option?
Probably more like the first. Once you get a totalitarian movement such as ISIS going, all sorts of crazies attached to it for their own reasons. I think that one of the more interesting things about this is that it occurred on the anniversary of the Charlie Hebdo attacks of a year ago. The bad guys love anniversaries. For example, the Boston Marathon bombing and the destruction of a chunk of Silicon Valley's electrical gear back 3 years ago were all on the anniversary within a day of the beginning of the American Revolution, which was 18th of April in '75. And there are all sorts of times in which they do things on revolution, on days in which things had happened. So it's always a good idea to keep your eyes peeled on Christmas and New Year's and the 4th of July and so forth, because there's probably a somewhat larger chance that individual is going to do something crazy, or perhaps a large institution is, than otherwise.
Now, according to the Paris prosecutor's office, the man was also carrying a mobile phone and a note showing the black ISIL flag and an unambiguous statement in Arabic. And this happened again on the anniversary of the Charlie Hebdo attacks. So are you thinking that this could be just one attack, or do you think there could be possible other attacks?
There may well be others. The limit on the number of crazies is not binding. I think it could. We could have this on other days too, but we could have more of this as a result of playing catch up with the Charlie Hebdo killers.
Jim, let's move to another hotspot and another concern. That would be North Korea. Yesterday, we got these reports about that rogue nation possibly testing an H-bomb. Your take on that, do you think they in fact tested the H-bomb? And what is going on with North Korea these days?
It's possible that they tested an H-bomb, although there appears to be some skepticism on the part of China and others that are quite close to it. I would have to say that from the point of view of damage to the United States, potential damage to the U.S. and to our allies such as South Korea and Japan, the H-bomb, A-bomb distinction is just one of blast. I mean, it means a bigger blast and more people would be killed if an H-bomb were dropped on Seoul or, for that matter, San Francisco. But the real distinction is whether or not a country has both a nuclear weapon of any kind and the ability to put it into orbit, which a simple ballistic missile could do, like a Scud. Because once you can get it into orbit, you can detonate it over the United States. And whether it's an A-bomb or an H-bomb or whatever it is, if it's nuclear, it produces gamma rays that effectively can destroy our electric grid. And we just saw in Ukraine a brutal hacking attack, probably by Russians, on Ukraine's electric grid, three important parts of it taken down. So we ought to focus more, I think, on the danger from the use of a simple nuclear weapon to destroy our electric grid than whether or not they have an A-bomb or an H-bomb.
We want to talk about Gitmo as well. The Pentagon announced yesterday that 2 more Gitmo detainees with al-Qaeda ties are being sent to Ghana. The first in a wave of 17 detainees expected to be transferred from the prison camp very soon. Ambassador, how long till we see these guys back on the battlefield? Many are expecting that they will get back there.
Well, according to the press report I saw, I'm not sure whether it's completely accurate. It said that ministry officials in Ghana had said that after 2 years, these 2 guys could go where they wanted. I mean, if you treat terrorists like trout, catch and release, which is what we're doing, you don't get much control over them. You don't get any more control than you do with a trout that you've caught and released. You can hold on to the terrorists for a year or 2 or 3, and some of these countries will do a good job of holding on to them as long as they say, but they often don't promise to hold them more than a couple or 3 years.
Why is this president so intent on letting these people get out of Gitmo?
Hey, JD, I tell you, I'm a reasonably good guy to talk to when you're trying to understand terrorists and dictators, but I have no understanding at all of why American politicians do what they do. I'm as mystified about what the president thinks he's accomplishing here as you are. It's like I say, it's treating murderous terrorists like trout, and it's, I think, ridiculous.
Ambassador, we want to talk about Libya, if we can, just for a moment, where ISIS claims a truck bomb that killed at least 47 people at a police training center. The Telegraph has an article now today saying that the former Libyan dictator Gaddafi gave a warning to British Prime Minister Tony Blair that jihadists similar to al-Qaeda would attack Europe if his regime was allowed to collapse. The tone of these conversations was described as desperate. Sounds like Gaddafi was on target with his prediction. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's maybe teaching us, I hope it's teaching us, that just because a movement like the Arab Spring shouts in the streets pro-public choice, democracy sounding phrases, doesn't mean it's going to be an improvement, even over somebody as bad as Gaddafi. Gaddafi was terrible with respect to the people of Libya, but at least he wasn't having his forces join ISIS. And so it's ISIS that has picked up steam and speed as a result of our helping topple Gaddafi. It doesn't do any good to just throw a guy like Gaddafi out. You have to be able to figure out and implement something that is going to work in his place.
And we will have to leave it right there. As always, Ambassador R. James Woolsey, tonight from Newsmax Washington. Sir, you have our thanks.
Great to be with you, JD.